Welcome to Folktale by Asher. Please subscribe. The torches burned bright around the ancestral shrine that night. Villagers gathered in a tight circle, their faces twisted with shock and anger. At the center knelt Nkechi, her wrapper dusty, her hands trembling. Clutched between her fingers was Obiora's missing wedding ring. The sacred stones behind her seemed to pulse with an ancient energy. Women gasped. Men whispered curses. Children peeked from behind their mothers' wrappers, eyes wide with fear. "She is invoking something," an old man hissed. "Bringing shame upon us all," another added. Then Obiora himself pushed through the crowd. His face was hard, like stone, his chest rising and falling with rage. He had searched everywhere for that ring, and now here it was, in his wife's hands, at the shrine where forbidden things were whispered about. "Nkechi!" His voice cracked like thunder. "What have you done?" She opened her mouth to speak, but before a single word could escape, the shrine fire flared unnaturally. Flames shot upward, dancing wildly though there was no wind. The crowd stepped back. Fear replaced anger. And then, Nnenna, the oldest woman in the village, stepped forward slowly. Her voice was soft, but sharp. "Child, why have you awakened the ancestors?" Let us go back to the morning when everything changed. Nkechi woke to the sound of roosters and the smell of wood smoke. She stretched on her mat, reaching instinctively for Obiora's side. He was already gone. That was normal. He rose early to tend the yam farm. But something felt wrong. A coldness hung in the air. She stood and began preparing breakfast. Palm oil, dry fish, cassava flour. Her hands moved with the rhythm of routine. Then she noticed it. The small clay dish where Obiora kept his wedding ring at night was empty. Nkechi frowned. She looked under the mat, behind the water pot, near the doorway. Nothing. Her chest tightened. The ring was not just jewelry. It had been passed down through his family for 3 generations. Losing it would bring shame. Then she heard voices outside. Women laughing, loud, mocking. "Did you see the way he smiled at her yesterday? A new woman always makes an old man young again." Nkechi froze. Her hands went still. The humiliation began to brew like storm clouds. She stepped outside quietly, and there, in the soft dirt near their hut, she saw them. Footprints, small, delicate. A woman's footprints leading away.
Her name was Adaeze. She arrived 3 weeks before the ring disappeared. The day she walked into the village, the air itself seemed to shift. She was beautiful, tall, skin like polished bronze. Her wrapper was tied with a confidence that made other women uncomfortable. Men stared. Women whispered. Children behaved strangely around her. They did not run to greet her like they did with other visitors. Instead, they watched from a distance, eyes cautious. One small boy told his mother, "Her shadow follows her too slowly." The mother scolded him for speaking nonsense, but the boy was not wrong. Adaeze said she was visiting distant relatives. She smiled often, spoke sweetly, helped at the market, and somehow, within days, she was always near Obiora, laughing at his jokes, bringing him water, sitting too close during evening gatherings. Nkechi watched it all, silent, swallowing her pain like bitter medicine. One evening, as Adaeze walked past, Nkechi noticed something. A bead around her neck. Small, black, with red markings. It was identical to the beads used by those who practiced forbidden rituals. Nkechi's grandmother had warned her about such things. That night, Nkechi could not sleep, and from deep in the forest, a spiritual drum began to beat. Slow, steady, though no festival was happening. The humiliation came like rain, slow at first, then pouring. It happened at the market on a busy afternoon. Nkechi was buying palm oil when she heard Adaeze's voice ring out across the crowd. "My dear, wait for me." Nkechi turned. Adaeze was smiling, waving, but she was not waving at Nkechi. She was waving at Obiora. He stood near the yam stall, frozen. The entire market went silent. Eyes darted between Obiora, Adaeze, and Nkechi. "My dear." The words hung in the air like smoke. Gasps, whispers, laughter barely hidden behind hands. Obiora did not correct her. He did not say, "I am a married man." He did not defend Nkechi's honor. He simply cleared his throat, looked away, and walked off quickly. Nkechi stood there, the calabash of palm oil trembling in her hands. Her cheeks burned. Her throat tightened. She wanted to scream, to cry, to disappear. But she did nothing. She paid for the oil, wrapped her dignity around herself like a cloak, and walked home. That night, the spiritual drum beat again, louder this time, closer. And Nkechi dreamed of water rising, swallowing everything. When she woke, her pillow was soaked with tears. Nkechi could not stay inside the compound the next day. The walls felt too close, the air too thick. She walked into the forest, the path shaded by old trees whose roots twisted like ancient secrets. She needed silence, space, somewhere to think. But she was not alone. Sitting on a fallen log was Nnenna, the spiritual elder. Her face was lined with age, her eyes sharp like a hawk's. She did not look surprised to see Nkechi. "Child," she said quietly, "you walk like someone carrying a heavy load." Nkechi hesitated, then sat down beside her. For a moment, neither spoke, but Nnenna turned and looked directly into Nkechi's eyes. "When the ring disappears, beware the woman who follows the shadow." Nkechi's breath caught. How did you—" But Nnenna only smiled sadly. She reached out and touched Nkechi's chest, right over her heart. "You carry a destiny you don't yet understand. The ancestors are watching. They always watch." Before Nkechi could ask more, the old woman stood and walked away, her steps silent on the forest floor. Nkechi sat there, trembling. The words echoed in her mind. A destiny, the ancestors, the ring. What did it all mean?
The second humiliation was worse. Obiora brought Adaeze into their compound. Not as a guest, not as a visitor, but as someone who belonged. He said she would help with chores. Nkechi said nothing. What could she say? A wife who protests too loudly is called jealous. A wife who stays silent is called weak. Villagers gathered to watch. They always did when there was drama. Adaeze moved through the compound like she owned it. She stirred the soup, swept the floor, laughed loudly at Obiora's stories, and Nkechi was treated like a servant in her own home. "Nkechi, bring more firewood. Nkechi, wash these plates. Nkechi, why is the water not fetched yet?" She swallowed every command, every insult, every look of pity from the women watching. Her hands worked, her heart broke, and still she said nothing. But that evening, as the sun set and the compound grew quiet, Nkechi saw something that made her blood run cold. Adaeze was standing near the doorway, her hand inside her wrapper. When she pulled it out, something glinted in the fading light. The ring. Obiora's wedding ring. Adaeze's fingers closed around it quickly. She glanced around, making sure no one saw. Then she slipped it back into her wrapper and walked away, humming softly. That night, the moon was full. Adaeze waited until the compound was silent, until even the dogs had stopped barking. Then she slipped out of her hut, the rein clutched tightly in her hand. She walked to the edge of the village where the old palm trees stood like sentinels. There she sat on a flat stone and held the ring up to the moonlight. At first, nothing happened. Then slowly, a faint glow appeared on the inner band of the ring. Markings, ancient, invisible to ordinary eyes. Adaeze's breath quickened. Her hands trembled. "So this is the one," she whispered. She had been searching for this ring for months. Her instructions had been clear. Find the marked ring, bring it to the hills, complete the ritual. But seeing the markings now, glowing softly in her palm, she felt a flicker of fear. Behind her, the air grew cold. A presence settled like a weight on her shoulders. She did not turn around. She did not need to. She knew what it was. A shadow. Not hers, but something else. Something that had been following her since the day she arrived in this village. "Is it done?" a voice whispered, low and human. Adaeze nodded quickly. "Almost." "Then finish it," the voice hissed, "before she awakens." Nkechi did not sleep that night. She lay on her mat, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything in her mind. The footprints, the bead, the way Adaeze had smiled, the ring. She knew now. Adaeze had taken it. But why? And what was she planning to do with it? When dawn broke, Nkechi rose quietly. She moved through the compound like a shadow herself, watching, waiting. And then she saw her, Adaeze slipping out of her hut, glancing around nervously. She was holding something small, wrapped in cloth. Nkechi followed, silently, carefully, keeping to the trees. Adaeze walked quickly, her steps purposeful. She did not go toward the market. She did not go toward the stream. She went toward the old hills, the place where no one went unless they had business with the spirits. Nkechi's heart pounded. She crouched behind a thick bush and watched as Adaeze stopped near a large stone. She unwrapped the cloth. The ring gleamed in the morning light. Nkechi was about to step forward, to confront her, when Adaeze spoke. "Some things," she said softly, her voice carrying on the wind, "are above your understanding." Nkechi froze. Adaeze had known she was there. And then Nkechi saw it. Adaeze's shadow. It moved a second later than her body, like it was dragging behind, like it was not entirely hers. Nkechi did not reveal herself. She stayed hidden, watching as Adaeze walked further up the hill. And then, from behind a cluster of rocks, a figure appeared. Tall, hooded, moving with the slow confidence of someone who feared nothing. Adaeze bowed slightly. "I have it," she said, holding out the ring. The hooded figure took it, studying it closely. Then he laughed, low and bitter. "So the prophecy was true after all," he said. "The ring still lives." "What do we do now?" Adaeze asked. "We wait. The ritual must happen at the right time. When the moon is dark, when the ancestors are distracted, then we take what was never his to begin with." Nkechi's breath caught. They were talking about Obiora, as if he were a prize, a target. A gust of wind suddenly lifted the hooded man's hood. Nkechi's eyes widened. She knew that face. Everyone in the village knew it. It was Chike, Nnenna's estranged son, the one who had been banished years ago for practicing forbidden rituals, the one who had sworn revenge against the village elders. And now he was here, with Adaeze, planning something dark. Nkechi pressed her hand over her mouth to keep from gasping. She had to tell someone, but who would believe her? Nkechi ran back to the compound, her mind racing. She had to warn Obiora, had to tell him what she had seen. But when she arrived, breathless and trembling, she found him standing in the center of the compound, surrounded by villagers. His face was twisted with anger. "Where were you?" he demanded. "I was spying," Nkechi's voice cut through the air like a blade. She stepped forward, her eyes wet with tears. "She attacked me, Obiora. Near the hills, she tried to take something from me." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Nkechi's mouth fell open. "That is not true," Nkechi said, her voice shaking. "I was following her because you are jealous," Obiora said coldly. "Because you cannot accept that I have found happiness again." The words struck Nkechi like stones. She looked around at the villagers. None of them met her eyes. They believed Adaeze. They always would. A beautiful woman's tears were more convincing than a quiet wife's truth. Nkechi felt her world crumbling. But before she could speak again, a voice rang out from the edge of the compound. "If truth refuses to speak, the ancestors will," Nnenna said, stepping forward slowly. Her eyes burned with something fierce and knowing. That night, Nkechi could not escape the dreams. They came like floods, pulling her under. She stood before the ancestral shrine. The stones glowed with a strange light. And there, on the altar, was the ring. It pulsed like a heartbeat. Around her, the faces of ancestors appeared, not angry, not vengeful, but mournful, sad, as if they were mourning something that had not yet happened. A voice spoke, deep, echoing. "If the ring completes its journey, blood will be demanded." Nkechi tried to run, but her feet were rooted. The ancestors circled closer, their eyes filled with warning. "The shadow seeks a home," the voice continued. "It will take what it wants, unless you stop it." Nkechi screamed and woke. She was soaked in sweat, her heart pounding. The hut was silent, but then she heard it. Footsteps, soft, deliberate, outside her door. She held her breath. The footsteps paused, then moved on, slowly, searching. Nkechi pressed herself against the wall, her mind screaming. Someone was looking for something, and she had a terrible feeling she knew what it was. When the footsteps finally faded, Nkechi sat in the darkness, trembling. The ancestors had spoken. The warning was clear. But what could she do? She was just one woman. And no one believed her. The next morning, chaos erupted. Obiora stormed through the compound, his face pale with panic. "My ring!" he shouted. "It is gone, completely gone." Villagers gathered quickly, whispering, pointing. Adaeze appeared, her face a mask of shock and concern. "I saw it yesterday," she said softly. "I thought you had put it away safely." "I did," Obiora said, his voice cracking, "but now it is not there. Someone has stolen it." All eyes turned to Nkechi. She stood near the doorway of her hut, her face calm, but her hands shaking. She knew what was coming. She could feel it. "It was her," a woman hissed. "She was jealous. She took it." "Yes," another agreed. "She wanted to shame him." Obiora looked at Nkechi, his eyes cold. "Did you take it?" Nkechi opened her mouth, but the words would not come. If she spoke now, if she accused Adaeze without proof, they would call her a liar, a troublemaker. The elder's warning echoed in her mind. Wait. Let the ancestors speak. So she said nothing. Her silence was taken as guilt. The villagers' whispers grew louder. Obiora turned away, disgusted. And Adaeze smiled, just a little, just enough. But then Nnenna appeared again, pulling Nkechi aside roughly. "Child," she hissed, "if you don't act now, you will lose more than a marriage." Nkechi found Adaeze at the stream the next day. The other women were there too, washing clothes, gossiping. Nkechi walked straight up to her, her heart pounding, but her voice steady. "Give it back," Nkechi said quietly. Adaeze looked up, her face innocent. "Give what back?" "The ring." The women stopped washing. They stared. Adaeze's smile widened. I don't have your husband's ring, but maybe it is because he trusts me more than you. Laughter rippled through the group. Humiliation burned in Nkechi's cheeks, but she did not look away. You were never meant to keep him, Adaeze whispered, so only Nkechi could hear. Nkechi's fists clenched. She wanted to scream, to fight, but then something happened. The water behind Adaeze rippled, not with the current, against it, as if something beneath the surface was moving, watching. Nkechi's breath caught. Adaeze's smile faltered for just a moment. She glanced back at the water, then quickly looked away. Leave me alone, Adaeze said, her voice sharper now, before you embarrass yourself further. Nkechi turned and walked away. But her mind was racing. The water, the shadow, the ring. Something was very, very wrong. Nnenna called Nkechi to her hut that evening. The old woman sat by a small fire, grinding herbs with steady hands. She did not look up when Nkechi entered. She said, "Sit." Nkechi obeyed. For a long moment, the only sound was the grinding of the pestle against stone. Then Nnenna spoke. There is a prophecy, older than this village. It speaks of a ring marked by the ancestors, a ring that chooses the true guardian of the home. Nkechi leaned forward. What does that mean? It means, Nnenna said slowly, that the ring does not belong to Obiora. It never did. It belongs to the one who can protect the household from spiritual danger, the one the ancestors trust. But Obiora's family, his family carried it, the elder interrupted. But carrying is not the same as owning. The wrong bearer invites destruction, sickness, death. The shadow that follows Adaeze knows this. It wants the ring. It wants to use it to bind itself to this world, to take root in your home. Nkechi's hands trembled. Then what do I do? Nnenna fiercely looked at her. You must retrieve it before the next moonrise, or everything you love will be consumed. Nkechi's heart pounded. How? That, Nnenna said softly. You must discover yourself. Nkechi sat in her hut that night, staring at the small bundle of belongings she had packed. A wrapper, a headscarf, a memory of a life that no longer felt like hers. She had made her decision. If Obiora believed lies over her truth, she would not fight anymore. She would leave, quietly, with dignity. When morning came, she stood before him. He was eating, barely looking at her. I am leaving, she said. Obiora paused. Leaving? Yes, if you believe I am a thief, a jealous woman, then there is nothing left for me here. He did not argue, did not beg for it to stay. He simply nodded. Do what you must. Nkechi felt her heart crack, but she did not let it show. She picked up her bundle and walked out of the compound. Villagers watched. Some looked sad, others relieved. Adaeze stood near the doorway, her smile triumphant. But as Nkechi passed through the gate, something strange happened. The compound rooster crowed, loud, sharp, 3 times, at the wrong hour. The villagers fell silent. An elder muttered, a bad omen. Adaze's smile faded, and Nkechi kept walking, her head high, her heart broken, but her spirit undefeated. Nkechi walked until her feet ached, until the village was far behind and the forest swallowed her whole. She did not know where she was going. She only knew she could not stay. When night fell, she found a clearing beneath a large tree and sat down, exhausted. The forest was alive with sounds. Crickets, owls, the rustle of leaves. But then something else. Whispers.
soft, surrounding her. Nkechi looked up and gasped. Faces, dozens of them, formed in the bark of the trees, in the shadows between branches. They were not frightening. They were watching, waiting. "Who are you?" Nkechi whispered. The whispers grew louder. Riddles, questions, warnings. Why do you run from your destiny? The ring calls you. You are the guardian. Nkechi's chest tightened. Instead of fear, she felt something else, belonging, as if the forest recognized her, as if she had been here before, in some other life. Then, beneath her feet, a soft glow appeared, a path made of light, leading deeper into the forest. Nkechi stood slowly. Her fear faded, and without understanding why, she followed the path, step by step, into the unknown. The path led Nkechi to a place she did not recognize, a grove, ancient, sacred. At its center stood a circle of stones, much like the shrine in her village, but older, covered in moss and memory. The air hummed with energy. Nkechi stepped forward. The moment her foot touched the center of the circle, the world around her shifted. She was no longer standing. She was watching, seeing. A vision unfolded before her eyes. She saw a woman, her ancestor, generations ago, standing before a fire. In her hands was the ring. It glowed with power. The woman spoke to the flames. "Let this ring protect the household. Let it choose the guardian. Let no shadow claim what the ancestors have blessed." The ring was forged, passed down, protected. But Nkechi saw something else. She saw men arguing. Greed. Pride. The ring passed from woman to woman, but always through the same bloodline, her bloodline. The vision faded. Nkechi gasped, her body trembling. She understood now. The ring was not Obiora's family heirloom. It was hers. It had always been hers. And the Adaeze's presence was disrupting the ancestral order. A voice whispered in the wind, "Then you must take it back." Nkechi nodded. Her fear was gone, replaced with purpose. Nkechi returned to the village, under the cover of darkness. She moved like a shadow, careful not to be seen. The compound was quiet, but something felt wrong. The air was thick, heavy. She crept toward Obiora's hut and peeked through a crack in the wall. What she saw made her blood run cold. Obiora lay on his mat, his face pale, his breathing shallow. He looked thinner, weaker, as if something was draining the life from him. Adaeze sat nearby, her back to him, murmuring words in a language Nkechi did not recognize. And her shadow, it was no longer just trailing behind her. It was darker, longer, almost alive. It stretched across the floor like black water. Nkechi's hands trembled. She wanted to burst in, to confront her, but something stopped her. A sound. Voices. She moved closer to Adaeze's hut, and through the thin walls she heard them. "Tonight," Adaeze was saying, "the ritual will be completed. By dawn, he will be mine, completely." A man's voice responded, "Chike." "And the wife?" "She is gone," Adaeze said with a laugh. "She ran like a coward. The ancestors chose poorly." Nkechi's jaw tightened. They were wrong. The ancestors had not chosen poorly. They had been testing her. And now she was ready. Nkechi waited until Adaeze left her hut. Then she slipped inside. The air was cold, unnatural. Shadows seemed to cling to the walls, but Nkechi did not hesitate. She searched quickly, under the mat, behind the water pot.
in the corner wrapped in cloth. And there it was, the ring. The moment her fingers touched it, warmth spread through her hand. The ring glowed softly, as if recognizing her, as if welcoming her home. But the hut began to shake. The walls groaned. The shadows twisted and writhed like living things. Nkechi grabbed the ring and turned to run. But Adaeze stood in the doorway. Her eyes were no longer human. They glowed faintly in the darkness. Her smile was slow and cruel. "I wondered when you would come," she said softly. Nkechi clutched the ring tightly. "This does not belong to you." Adaeze laughed, a sound that did not belong to any woman. "You think you can stop me? You are nothing, a cast-aside wife, powerless. I am the guardian, and you are not welcome here." The ring flared brighter. Adaeze hissed, stepping back as if burned. The shadows around her recoiled. "Return it," Adaeze snarled, "or he dies before dawn." Nkechi did not move. The ring pulsed in her hand, its light pushing back the darkness that clung to Adaeze like a second skin. Adaeze's face twisted, no longer human, no longer beautiful. The mask was falling away. "You cannot win," Adaeze hissed. "The ritual is already begun. His life is tied to mine now. If you do not give me the ring, he will die." Nkechi's heart pounded. She thought of Obiora, weak, dying. She thought of the life they had once shared, the promises, the dreams, but she also thought of the ancestors, the prophecy, the truth. "Obiora belongs to destiny," Nkechi said, her voice firm, "not to shadows." Adaeze screamed. The sound was not human. It echoed through the hut, shaking the walls. Her shadow rose behind her, towering, monstrous. It lunged toward Nkechi, but the ring flared brighter. The shadow recoiled, hissing. Adaeze stumbled backward, her face contorted with rage and pain. "You will regret this," she snarled. "Before dawn, you will beg me to take it back." And then she was gone, vanished into the darkness, leaving only the smell of smoke and something rotten behind. Nkechi stood there, trembling. Outside, a scream pierced the night, villagers shouting. And then she heard it. "Obiora has collapsed!" Nkechi ran, the ring still glowing in her hand. She burst into Obiora's hut to find villagers gathered around his mat. He lay unconscious, his skin pale, his breathing barely there. Nnenna was kneeling beside him, her hands pressed against his chest. "What happened?" Nkechi demanded. "The curse," Nnenna said grimly. "It is taking him. The shadow wants him, and it will not stop until it has what it came for." "The ring," Nkechi whispered. "No," the elder said sharply, "not the ring. You. The shadow wanted you all along. It used him as bait to draw you out, to force you to choose." Nkechi's chest tightened. "Then what do I do?" Nnenna looked at her, eyes fierce. "You take the ring to the shrine. You call upon the ancestors. Only they can break the curse now. But you must go quickly, before the moonrise, or he will be lost forever." Nkechi nodded. She looked down on Obiora one last time. His face was so still, so fragile. She wanted to hate him for the betrayal, for the humiliation, but she could not. He was still the man she had married, and she would not let him die. She turned and ran. out of the hut, out of the compound, toward the ancestral shrine. Behind her, the shadows followed. Nkechi ran through the darkness, her breath ragged, her feet pounding against the earth. The torches along the village path flickered and went out one by one as she passed. The air grew colder, heavier. She could hear whispers, not from the ancestors, from something else, something that did not belong. "Give it back," the voices hissed. "Give it back or watch him die." Nkechi did not stop. She would not stop. The shrine appeared ahead, its stones standing like silent guardians. But as she approached, Adaeze stepped out of the shadows. Her face was no longer even trying to be human. Her eyes glowed, her shadow towering behind her, massive and writhing. "You cannot enter," Adaeze said, her voice layered with something ancient and terrible. "The shrine will not accept you."
"Yes, it will," Nkechi said, her voice shaking but strong. "Because I am the guardian." She took a step forward. Adaeze lunged, but before she could reach Nkechi, the shrine fire ignited by itself, roaring to life with a sound like thunder. Adaeze screamed, thrown back by the force of it. The flames burned bright, brighter, and Nkechi stepped into the circle of stones, the ring held high. The moment Nkechi entered the shrine, the world shifted. The fire surrounded her, but it did not burn. It welcomed her. The stones glowed, and then, one by one, the ancestors appeared, not as faces in trees, not as whispers in the wind, but as figures, standing, watching. An elder among them stepped forward. Her face was kind, but stern. "You have come," she said. "Yes," Nkechi replied. "I have come to save him, to end this." The elder nodded. "The shadow sought to claim what was not hers. She used your husband's pride, his weakness. But you, child, you have been faithful, even when wronged, even when mocked." "What do I do now?" Nkechi asked. "The ring was always yours," the elder said. "It chose you long before you knew. But there is something you must understand. Your husband's life is tied to your forgiveness. If you choose justice without mercy, he will die. If you choose mercy without justice, the shadow will return. You must choose both." Nkechi's heart pounded. She looked at the ring, then at the ancestors, then at the fire. "Show me," she whispered. And they did. They showed her the truth, Obiora's weakness, his betrayal, but also his suffering. They showed her Adaeze's deception, her manipulation, and they showed her one final thing. The ring was never meant for marriage. It was meant for her alone. The ancestors revealed the final truth. The ring had been passed down through Nkechi's bloodline for generations. It was not a symbol of marriage. It was a symbol of spiritual authority, of protection, of guardianship. Only she could wield it. Only she could end the ritual. "Adaeze sought to steal your destiny," the elder said. "She thought the ring would give her power, but power cannot be stolen, only claimed by those worthy." Nkechi looked at the ring glowing in her palm. She understood now. This was never about Obiora. It was about her strength, her faith, her willingness to stand when the world told her to kneel. Outside the shrine, Adaeze screamed. The shadow lunged toward the fire, desperate, but the flames roared higher, forming a barrier. "You cannot have him," Nkechi said. "You cannot have this home. You cannot have me." She placed the ring on the altar stone. The ancestors chanted. The fire burned brighter, and Adaeze's shadow began to unravel, thread by thread, scream by scream. "No!"
Adaeze shrieked, "No!" But it was too late. The shadow dissolved into smoke. Adaeze collapsed, her human form crumbling like ash. And then she was gone, completely, as if she had never existed. The shrine grew silent. The ancestors faded. And Nkechi stood alone, trembling but victorious. When Nkechi returned to the compound, dawn was breaking. The villagers had gathered, waiting. Obiora lay on his mat, still unconscious, but his breathing was stronger now. Color had returned to his face. Nkechi knelt beside him. She placed the ring on the shrine stone in the center of the compound and whispered, "Let justice and mercy meet." The ring glowed one final time. Then the light faded, and Obiora's eyes opened. He looked at Nkechi, confused, weak, and then he remembered everything. The humiliation, the betrayal, the lies. Shame washed over his face. He tried to sit up, but Nkechi gently stopped him. "Rest," she said softly. I do not deserve your mercy," Obiora whispered, tears filling his eyes. "No," Nkechi agreed. "You do not. But mercy is not about what you deserve. It is about what I choose to give." Obiora wept. The villagers bowed their heads, ashamed of how they had treated her. Nnenna stepped forward and placed a hand on Nkechi's shoulder. "Patience is louder than shame. Destiny cannot be stopped." Nkechi stood. She walked out of the compound, bathed in the soft light of morning, not as a wife, not as a victim, but as a woman who had fulfilled her destiny. The ancestors had tested her, and she had passed. The ring remained on the shrine, a reminder, a protection, and a warning.
Those who mock what they do not understand will one day bow before its purpose.